There are many valid reasons to scrutinize multinational corporations, from their environmental impact to labor practices. We recently reported on how some companies abuse fine print contracts to trick employees, an issue that was actually tackled on the hit show Emily in Paris. Indeed, a U.S. Trade Commission is now seeking to ban companies from using that practice. But one of the stranger political attacks on companies lately is using them as a stand-in for overhyped concerns about woke capitalism. Now, that's a term often credited to New York Times conservative writer Ross Douthat. And Ron DeSantis has basically swiped the term and the idea and seized on it for public brawls with corporations like Disney.
When you're trying to impose a woke ideology on our state, we view that as a significant threat.
When that company has very high up people talking about injecting pansexualism into programming for young kids, it's wrong. Walt Disney would not want that. When we were young, you could watch cartoons without having to worry.
There's woke employees in these companies, and the inmates have basically run the asylums. To have the economy politicized this way, that's a recipe for disaster.
We fight the woke and the corporations. We will never, ever surrender to the woke mob. Florida is where woke goes to die.
Whatever this is, it's not traditionally conservative, because he's talking about having the government dictate what private companies do. Whether that is what he admits, which is try to control Disney cartoons and what's in them, even if he is correct, which he's not, about what's in the Disney cartoons, it's not the government's job to try to pressure Disney to make cartoons one way or the other. All of it is more word salad than coherent policy, but DeSantis uses government power to hit companies like, say, BlackRock, which he pulled billions in investments from. And he continued this odd clash with Disney, putting DeSantis on the other side of the First Amendment. He's using government power to try to punish Disney's free speech, including its advocacy for, among other things, equal rights for all of its employees. Now, this was already a tricky line for DeSantis, for anyone actually paying attention and not just cheering at the buzzword woke. Tonight's news is he's getting hit for the blatant hypocrisy because he went out of his way to elevate lobbyists for Disney and BlackRock as co-chairs for his inauguration. Now, that sounds like bad politics if you're cozying up to the enemies you've been targeting on the campaign trail. I don't think political strategists would suggest DeSantis go campaign with the people that he wants everyone to think he's against. But he's taking the risk and opening himself up to the hypocrisy hit for money. DeSantis taking donations and maintaining the corporate ties with the same groups that he claims to be at war with as part of his effort to take on, quote, woke corporations. I'm joined now by Joan Walsh, National Affairs Correspondent with The Nation. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Ari.
Joan, there's more than one hole here. I landed on the hypocrisy, so your thoughts first on that piece. You're at war with these companies except for when you need their money.
Maybe I've gotten cynical, but it doesn't really surprise me, Ari. I don't think DeSantis believes in anything in particular. I think he's totally happy to take their money. In some ways, I question the lobbyists who gave him the money, who actually, get a lot of money from, say, Disney and BlackRock and some of the pharmacies that he's gone after as well. They get paid by them, but then they're giving money to DeSantis and trying to cover both bases. So, money in politics, everyone's cynical, and that doesn't surprise me. What really hurts, you did mention the BlackRock example, which I think is a really where he actually did, perhaps there were consequences attached to his rhetoric, but for the most part, it's just rhetoric. And the people who are suffering in Florida are Floridians. Just today, he turned down an attempt by the College Board to institute advanced placement classes in high school for African-American history, saying it lacked educational value. And I'm like, Ron, with all due respect, how would you know? He's trashed the teaching of LGBTQ or even the mentioning of LGBTQ families in Florida. So real people pay the consequences. And for the most part, corporations shrug off his woke capitalism rant because, he tries to make Florida a great place to make money. And so everybody's happy.
Yeah, no, I think you lay that out. Look, we can't paint all of capitalism with a single brush, but today's multinational capitalism is not known for its overwhelming wokeness or its super pro-labor standards or anything else. I mentioned that briefly. And so I'm curious what you think as well as the way the Disney thing could have been a one-off or brief, but he really keeps coming back to it. He wants to run on it. And we played the sound there. He is saying out loud that the government should help pressure and then decide what are in private companies' cartoons. It's anti-First Amendment, and it's anti the old version of conservatism.
Well, it is, and they should be standing up to him, and they should fire the lobbyists who gave him money, to be honest.
Yeah.
But they won't. The other thing that he did today, I think, or yesterday, I'm losing track, is again very statist, very anti, old school republicanism, is ban mask mandates, vaccine mandates in private businesses, as well as in cities or counties or public buildings. It doesn't matter, public or private. You have no rights to impose those things, even if you serve a high-risk population. He's doing this, I think, to contrast with Trump. Like, he really thinks he can hit Trump because for about 5 minutes at the beginning of the pandemic, not the beginning, but when people were really dying in spring of 2020, Trump shut some stuff down for a little while. He thinks that's going to be a point of comparison, I think, when he runs against Trump, which I expect him to. But that's as outrageous also, telling private corporations in your workplace, you cannot have masks, you cannot require people to be vaccinated. It's just, it's a really dystopic view. I'm not a Republican, I never have been, but I grew up with a Republican Party that would never stand for either the imposition of free speech codes or, cartoon guidelines for private corporations or health care guidelines of that sort, limiting the freedom of private corporations. So, he's a horror show.
Yeah. And it really is going to go under a microscope. The state level politics are different than when you want to be president. So we'll see if people notice how it's working. We'll keep reporting on it. Joan, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I want to tell everyone.